What's up, everybody? It's Johnny King Show. I am privileged and psyched to have a buddy here in studio, so to speak. Jimmy Everetts. Thanks for being here, man.
How we doing? Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's local Denverite with me here in town. We connected pre-COVID and had a little bit of a hiatus.
Man, it's like the beginning and end of a war, right?
Yeah.
I met you back in the day.
Yeah, before all the PTSD that we have from COVID. Yeah, exactly. But it's been good. I've kept up with you a little bit on social media, just seeing what you're up to, and you're always posting stuff that makes me laugh, which I appreciate.
Absolutely, that's what I'm here for.
And you love dogs, which I appreciate. And
you gotta. They love us.
Yeah.
You gotta give it back.
I'm on a. I didn't tell you, I'm on a waiting list for a pup.
Okay.
Hopefully the bun is in the oven, but we'll see.
Okay. So what does that?
Bernese Mountain Dog. Bernese
Okay.
Mountain Dog, maybe with a little poodle intermixed in there to not be
So
so
they're
much.
not shedding.
Yeah, we'll see.
I really should have thought through that before. My dog is like a moderate shedder, but yeah, wise choice.
The roommate has a dog, border collie that sheds, not a ton. Girlfriend has a golden that sheds out the wazoo.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh yeah, they make up for being amazing
Yeah.
with some of that. So when you talk waiting list, like,
meaning I've put my deposit down.
Okay.
My name is on a list of like 6 or 8 people who have dibs at the next litter.
Okay.
So,
okay,
but we don't know exactly when.
so you wait in that pecking order, or do you
Yeah.
get like some fight club to figure out who gets the
Yeah, I wish. That'd probably bump me up. I think I'm on 3rd.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we'll see.
They're awesome dogs.
We'll see. It was a COVID pup, but now it's been delayed. So we'll see when I'll get it.
That's fair.
I'm very much
It's gonna
a
happen.
dog person. So your dog's a great looking dog.
And yeah,
He's smart.
Yeah.
Seems like a smart
We're
guy.
when he wants to be, right? When they want to
Selectively.
listen and they
Same-
want to do things, yeah, very much. They
Man's
take
best
after
friend.
their owner,
Yeah.
very much,
Right.
Because he knows. Like there's times I call him and he comes, and there's times like you talk to him about certain things, and
Yeah.
he's like, you know, I'm not going to listen to any of this.
Yeah.
Started digging my backyard as soon as I bought this new house, and I start to give him grief for it, and then I realize like you basically helped buy this house, so I
Yeah.
can't even. It's your yard.
Yeah.
Just do your thing.
Have at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's why we resonate well with dogs. I have the selective hearing too, or the selective
Very much.
memory.
Sniffing butts. I mean, it's I don't know.
Right?
Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah. Selective hearing is.
Sniffing butts. I love it. Well, you're a mortgage lender, amongst other things, but it's been pretty cool that your story of where you've come from is pretty inspiring, which is why I've been thinking of having you on for a while. So it's cool that we're finally doing this, but you've made something out of not nothing, but you definitely have had from ground zero to success, story.
Yeah.
Which is kind of fun.
I mean, I kind of look back, leaving my previous industry, and thinking about, I just went over 3 full years in the business, but thinking back to actually before leaving my previous career, like days before leaving that career, being terminated. And I reflect back on a Sunday night sitting on my stairs at my house, empty house, no animals, no real close friendships, or at least I shouldn't say that, but like I didn't have the opportunity to spend a lot of time with quality people, didn't have a strong sphere, and just feeling empty. And I remember kind of having a breakdown and thinking like, how in the hell did I let this happen? How am I was I was months away from turning 40, but I'm like I'm going to be 40 years old, and this like I have money in the bank, but I like that's I have security, but I don't have a life.
Right.
I haven't built a life.
Like, where's the value? Yeah.
It's been
Which I think is great, because I feel like what a lot of people, but particularly men who I think are going to be listening and watching this, can resonate with that. So I feel like I've had that too, that moment, and hopefully we don't have too many of those moments in life, but you can sometimes be like, how the hell did I get here? And how unconscious must I have been to allow things to get, whether it be, let's say, your health, your physical health is this bad, or your relational health, or your financial health, or hating the work that you do.
And it's mind-boggling to think that it took years, right? I didn't get there in a handful of months. It was a decade of working in an industry. It was a decade of making choices as far as my career direction, the people I surrounded myself, the women I pursued, the friends I kept around. I mean, I had lost my temper. I was the angriest I had ever been, the most depressed I had ever been, and I didn't do it for months or weeks. I did it for years. It's funny. I actually 2 nights ago, I received I was terminated from that employment, and rightfully so. I mean, something needed to be done.
You were in nightclubs.
I did. I ran nightclubs in Denver for about a decade.
Right.
And so when I was terminated, I had received a severance, but I also applied for unemployment, and they denied it. So, and I didn't know this, but I got a packet of the statements that were written by coworkers and other managers about my termination. And it was it was a few months after I'd been let go. So there's still, obviously there's some bitterness, but I'm also starting to feel good about things. But it was very sobering to read these statements, because while there might have been some embellishment, there was a lot of truth in what these people had to say about me. There was a lot of truth in how angry I constantly was, and how negative, and how I didn't encourage anybody, I didn't coach anybody, I didn't lead anybody. And so a couple of nights ago, randomly, I'm going through a drawer looking for something, and I don't even know why I kept it, but I found it, and I'm reading it over again, and I'm thinking the difference between that man, who I could walk into a room where 99 things are correct and one thing's wrong, and you're going to hear about that one thing that's wrong. To I don't resonate with that person at all now. I would almost laugh at myself for noticing the one thing wrong if I did. That was just so I read it one more time. I read the statements one more time. I thought about it one more time, and then threw it away. It kind of felt good it's kind of the last resonance of that person.
Well, I think that's why you kept it, I think, because I think it was motivating to be like, oh shit, to get a clear glimpse of and to really know that you had, well, maybe you didn't know, but perhaps the capability, the possibility of being someone different, right?
Very true.
So it's like all of a sudden you had your own little, conscious or subconscious process you're going through of divorcing that man, and here you are as a new man, you're like, cool, and I'm over this. So
it really was.
I can let it go. It's
It
kind of
really
cool.
was.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. It's pretty powerful. I my roommate who I've had on the podcast, another guy that I just had maybe 2 weeks ago, talking about, he was in nightclubs as well. This other guy was in a gang. It's like a lot of guys that have been on the podcast have talked about darker past, let's say, or things that they got caught up in, and when you're in the middle of it, and like you said, it took years, right?
Right.
A decade or whatever. For me, I was someone for 30 years, ultimately, that I wasn't proud of. And I'm like, how did I get here? To your point.
You don't see it. The age-old adage that a fish doesn't know it's wet. You just don't realize it. I remember right before being terminated, I had a night where I had some friends come into one of the bars, and I blew up at a door girl and my door guy, and they're both 20, 21-year-old kids, right? Not you. And a great buddy of mine pulls me off to the side, and he said, "Man, are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, tough night, but I'm fine." And he said, "Jimmy, I've never heard you talk to a human being like that before." And I wasn't that human being outside of those walls. But man, there was a switch that flipped where I became just an angry lunatic. But even at the end, I didn't realize, when I was sat down to be terminated, in my mind, and what I kept saying to my old boss was, "Man, I've been so much better. This last year and a half, I've been so much better." When I hadn't been better at all, I'd just been silent. I just wouldn't talk to people. I'd walk in and just keep my mouth shut, because I knew, man, if I open my mouth, I'm just going to be destructive. And rightfully so. They also, the people that saw that, took it as, well, now first he yelled at us, now he ignores us. Now we're nothing. He won't even make eye contact with us. And here I was thinking, I'm not going to hurt you. I'm just going to Just gonna stare over here.
Right. What do you feel like that is? I mean, you said like within the four walls of that building, and because it makes me think another buddy I was having a conversation with recently. He'd gotten so depressed, and as soon as he got let go of his job, he was so much happier. He didn't realize that his job was killing him. Was it the job or was it something else?
I think it's a combination of both.
Yeah.
I think it was the realization of, I had spent years in the military, college, I had worked in broadcast journalism. Like I had all these, ambitions, right? And I worked my tail off in that industry because I had a short-term vision, not a long-term. I'm gonna outwork everybody. I'm gonna become the general manager, and then I'm gonna become the area supervisor. And I thought, well, really the only next step is to become the president of this company. I never really looked at the individuals in those positions because I don't emulate them now. But so I think it was a combination of, man, this is what I've built. Like, this is my career.
Yeah.
This is what I'm going to accomplish. I don't have an impact on anyone's life. I don't. My goal is for people to move on from this job, not to grow in it. And then combine that with the fact that the service industry, given enough time, people become negative as shit. I mean, that's just that's how the majority of us are. I'll never forget one of my favorite stories. My buddy Tim worked for me for like maybe a few weeks as a manager at one of the clubs. And he comes up to me and he says, I can't do this. I was like, you've been here for 3 weeks. Yeah. And he says, dude, I just walked up to your servers to tell them to go have, a great night. And he's this big jovial guy. He's like, you go kill it. And one of the servers looks him dead in the eye and goes, why are you always so effing happy? Yeah. And I knew that server well. And the funny thing is, in my mind, I didn't think, way to go. In my mind, I went, damn, dude, how are you always so happy? Yeah. So I think that's what it was. It was. I felt like I was wasting life, and I was surrounded by people that were just as miserable, if not more miserable than me. If someone was a little bit happy, it was like a bright star on a dark night.
I think it's really good. I mean, some of the stuff that you wrote in your little bio here, which I appreciate you doing, it resonates, and we're already on this conversation, which I think is so relevant. Because I too remember my work that I was doing before, kind of life imploded on me. I was, at all these trade shows with all these guys that were 2 times my senior or 3 times they were the most miserable looking, sad looking guys, literally just kind of like looking at their watch every 5 minutes, like. I was at trade shows, I'm like, what am I doing? Like I was not passionate. It was literally sucking the life out of me. And then when I finally started my own business in 2010 and starting to kind of feeling more empowered and, just vital in life, let's just say, I'd say post different things on social media. Some people would be like, fuck you. Not everyone gets to chase their dreams. I have to, I have to pay the bills. I have to do this and like, screw you. And it's kind of like, no, everyone has that choice, Granted, it's not easy to get yourself unentangled.
I mean, I think, I don't, and I know there's a fine line to this because I know a lot of it is ego. I look at, there are people in my old industry who moved on to bigger and better. There are people, some of them involved with my termination. And again, I don't blame them for doing it. Shit, they did me a favor. Yeah. They're in the exact same spot that they were in 3 years ago when I left. Yeah. My departure didn't improve their situation at all, didn't improve what they accomplished. So I think that, to have that moment, there are those people who, I've noticed that there are people that want to genuinely see you succeed to any and all extent you can. There's certain people that don't want you to succeed. And then there's certain people that want you to succeed to a point. Like, I want you to be happy. I don't want you to be thrilled. Right. I want you to take a trip. I don't want you to be gone too long.
Yeah. What do you think it is that for you, at least in your experience, that allowed you to kind of, was it just making lemonades out of lemons in terms of getting let go and then realizing that something was coming, obviously, for you to start realizing that you needed to let go of that version of you and step into a new version.
When you were a little kid, you ever watch wrestling, or you still watch wrestling?
Yeah.
Like there were certain hero characters and certain villain characters, and sometimes they would switch back and forth.
Yeah.
I had become the villain at work, right? I was the guy that came around a corner and people were like, "Oh man, Jimmy's here," and so I was relegated to that by the time I was let go. Like there was no fixing it. Didn't matter how nice I was to people, I would still hear, "Oh man, Jimmy, people think you are an asshole," and so it was helpless. And so when I was let go, the initial fear of, man, how am I gonna make a living? How am I gonna make as much money as I was making before? That took a little while, but as soon as I stopped worrying about that piece and believed that I would make up for it, it was like this huge opportunity. Man, I can go wherever I want. I can surround myself with whoever I want, and I can be the good guy immediately. I don't have to. I have to earn respect and I have to earn trust and all those things. But man, the person I was around my friends, I can be that everywhere. And that was the most empowering feeling ever. Like walking into working Fairway Independent Mortgage and walking into that office the very first time and just walking through and shaking hands and every morning being that guy as soon as I got there. And not being responsible for it, right? Like I wasn't in charge of anybody. I wasn't responsible for trying to motivate anyone. All I had to do was get up, motivate myself, go kick some ass that day. The end.
No, life is simple.
It was immediately empowering.
Yeah.
And it also enabled me time to, we talk about healing, to heal the things that I needed to correct about myself.
Yeah.
And the things that I was holding myself too accountable for. Right? I think that it took me years. I thought I had become so bad in that old profession that I thought I was no longer a good leader. I thought my leadership skills were corrupted when they weren't. They were misplaced. They were jaded, but I still had the ability to connect with people. I still had the ability to encourage people. And it took me a couple years to realize that. It took me a couple years to trust myself enough to hire assistants and bring people onto a team, and know that I'll have my slip ups. I'll have my moments where they got to roll their eyes and go, "Oh, there's Jimmy." But for the most part, I'm where I need to be in that phase.
Interesting. Like your own, I mean. Again, divorcing yourself from an older version of you still took some time of shedding off those layers or those old memories,
Absolutely.
to step into a great version of you, right? Which I think is a good reminder to those that are listening or watching that, transformation, you can have a defining moment, and yet it's like, okay, I define this moment as like, enough is enough. I'm no longer going to settle for being 60 pounds overweight, but you still got to do the fucking work.
Absolutely.
It still takes half a year, years
Absolutely.
to change your physique, and you kind of do the same thing professionally as well as emotionally. It seems like
it is. I mean, I think one of the biggest triggers was that I had never been in an abundant environment before. Right? I was always, in school. There's only so many people who get A's. In the military, obviously, there's only the rank is very obvious. In the nightclub industry, the bartenders, cocktail servers, everybody has like a level of cattiness about who's making more money and who's getting what shifts.
Right.
Getting into the industry I am now, and several. I mean, when you get into a point where I don't have to worry about other people in my profession taking business from me or making more money or any of those things. All I have to do is live up to my abilities, grow my business. There's enough food for everybody to eat. And that helped change the perspective and allow me to just kind of grow into myself and know that eventually good things would happen. And we talk about, patience, someone that wants to lose weight, get into better shape. Yeah, we want that to happen in a week, a month. and we want to see some results right away. I always loved, and I've done it. You know, when you're a kid, you work out, you do like 10 push-ups, and you stand in front of the mirror, like all of a sudden you're gonna look like Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I look back now just 3 years, but I think about, you know, I underestimated. It's Tony Robbins who says we love to overestimate what we can accomplish in a year and underestimate what we can accomplish in 10.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a lot of that. I thought, man, in 6 months I could do this. In a year I can do this. When it wasn't, it took me longer.
Yeah.
But once it got there, once that momentum built, then it just flows.
Yeah.
It flows.
I think that's you speak to just the idea that consistency over time wins out.
Absolutely inevitable.
And everything. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, you know, we hear it countless times. I know I've been guilty of it. You know, when you're knocking on 1,000 doors and you quit on number 999 when one more would have broke it all open.
Mm-hmm.
You know, very much what I convince myself of all the time. It's what I encourage anybody who listens to me. You gotta keep knocking on the doors.
Yeah. Amen to that. Well, let's rewind the clock a little bit and talk a little more about your childhood. You said you're a 2-time high school dropout.
Absolutely.
Right.
Overachieving screw up.
Overachieving screw up. Spent some time in the military. Go back to maybe some key moments that you felt like were relevant, maybe whether they be before high school or during high school, that led you into kind of maybe your success and who you are, happy with who you are today.
You know, so, you know, and I joke about it now. I was never I wouldn't consider myself a bad kid.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't the kid that looked for trouble. You know, I was. You didn't have to worry about me coming home with handcuffs on.
Right.
But I was brutally lazy. Brutally.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't get me to do a damn thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I never recognized as a kid that my effort at anything would result in a benefit.
Mm.
And so, you know, dropping out halfway through my junior year, I go back for my senior, I get kicked out halfway through my senior year, and talk about clueless. Like, I still had no idea. I'm living on a buddy's couch midway through the summer of 1996, and forget a plan. Like, I'm just a lump of shit. And I remember even my buddy's mother not really saying, hey, you need to get a job or get out of here. She was like, do you think you could mow the lawn or something? Like, you eat a lot of food. Could you do something? And so it's funny. My mother always says, well, thank God you went to the Navy. But even my first 4 years in the Navy, I was the same. I lucked out. The Navy happened to be the one, and I'm sorry, I'm gonna kind of give the Navy a little grief, but they were the only branch that would accept me without a high school diploma. Mm-hmm. And so even my first 4 years in the Navy, I didn't accomplish anything. I got my high school diploma. That was about it. Mm-hmm. But I lucked into screwing up enough that I had to re-enlist. So at the end of my first 4 years, I didn't have any money saved. I didn't have a college degree. I was in the same spot, and I told myself, if you get out now, you're just going to go home and be the same exact person you were before.
Totally, yeah. And
so I would say my first, joining the Navy, having them accept me was my first big break. But the second and life-defining one was, or life-changing, I should say, was re-enlisting, and I transferred from Pearl Harbor to New London, Connecticut. There's a submarine. I was on submarines for both tours. Mm. And so when I transferred to New London, I was stationed on a submarine called the USS Memphis. Mm-hmm. And on that boat, I met easily the greatest group or collection of human beings I've ever been around in my life. Between the guys I served with and their families, and their kids. And that was my first experience in life where my effort mattered. And I remember getting to that boat and being the same guy I'd been, screwing off, doing this and that. But I really wanted these guys to like me. And one of my closest friends on the planet now, a guy named Kyle Antall, one day I was supposed to do something for him, and I didn't. I went home. I was told I could go home. I went home. Mm-hmm. And so he pulls me off to the side the following day on the boat, and he says, Jimmy, none of us care that you're lazy, but don't be lazy on our shit. Mm-hmm. And in that moment, I realized if I don't work hard, you're not going to like me.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to want to be around me. You're not going to be a friend.
Mm-hmm.
When that didn't matter anywhere else.
Right.
You know, maybe it mattered in sports and school, but not to that big an extent.
Right.
And none of your buddies gave a shit if you got A's or F's.
Right.
And that was kind of a trigger. Like, okay. And so I never, you know, I joke to this day, I never really cared about the Navy. I wasn't a gung-ho, I'm going to win awards in the Navy. I was about my guys. I was about the people I served with. And that included, honestly, talking to them about whether they wanted to stay in the Navy or what they could accomplish if they got out. So I did, I feel like I'm being long-winded.
No, this is good. I actually like it. It's good.
And so I did that 4 years. In the early stages of that tour, 9/11 occurred.
Oh, interesting.
And so we did some deployments after that, and really had a chance to, one, see the world, and become like, and grow from being a kid into being a man for what that's worth as a 25, 26-year-old guy, because I know we don't really grow up till we're 57. And so to have kind of that moment with that group of guys, you know, when we talk about the ability to go back in time and tell yourself something, or I'm glad I didn't graduate high school. I'm glad I didn't take advantage of my first 4 years in the military. I'm glad that I didn't do anything that would have screwed up that path, because those guys, those people, the men and women involved on that submarine changed everything about who I am. They gave me confidence to be who I am. They instilled in me, you know, when I got out of the Navy, and it's hilarious. I told my parents I'm getting out, and they said, that's good. We kind of want you safe. There's a lot of things going on. And I said, well, I'm going to go to college. And they said, oh, maybe you should stay in the Navy. Well, school's not really your thing. But in college, I couldn't just get C's and B's. Like, I had to have A's. Everything at that moment became, I got to make up for being a failure in high school.
Interesting.
And that has just built and built and built. So I genuinely went from being the laziest kid I can imagine to, like, everything I do now is almost in an attempt to fight back against how lazy I was. Like, even on days where I feel like taking a day off, I think, man, 17-year-old Jimmy would do that, but he would take a week off. So you better work today just in case.
Yeah. Do you feel like you can kind of feather the balance? I mean, as you get older, do you find, I mean, obviously, if you just keep grinding and grinding, there's a point where, well, maybe there isn't, but I feel like you border on the line of burnout, or like starting to question, like, is all there is to life just working hard and that sort of thing? But you take plenty of time to relax and enjoy yourself.
I'm there. I think that there was a time in the nightclubs I was, and I love the term grind because I think we overuse it more than, you know. But I mean, I worked my ass off in that club, and again, you talk about lessons, and I'm like, well, what the hell did I do that for? Yeah, I got promoted, I got paid more, but I mean, was it worth it? You know, all the things I missed, all the nights I should have taken off. I'm in a career now where my effort has a huge, you know, plays a huge factor in obviously what I get out of it. But I'm at a point where what that goal isn't just monetary, isn't just, you know, I did this much work. And so having life and enjoying life and being around people and giving myself, now I'll admit, I still suck at truly intentionally giving myself time off. Like, I have plenty of time, but I don't enjoy it because I'm always kind of in my head. But I recognize, and I've been spending the last few months especially really thinking about what am I doing? What is the purpose behind it? You know, what is the end objective? Because without that, you know, all this effort is just waking up each day and recycling the same day.
Right. Which gets to my point. Like, if you keep thinking to yourself, like, oh, I'd like the day off, but man, 17-year-old Jimmy would take, then you're always reacting out of what you don't want to be, right? You're always being kind of pushed from the pain of, not liking who you were. But then there is always the question, why are you? It's not only to not be this guy, right? Because I've gone through the same thing.
Very fair.
I was like, I no longer want to be the guy that was, got me up to 30 years old. But then after a while of just trying to make sure I don't run into that guy in the rearview mirror, I had to sometimes start to look forward and be like, well, where am I actually going? I don't even know where I'm going. I'm just kind of running forward while looking over my shoulder, right? So I think
there's that makes me think about the idea that I think I'm hopefully reaching that point where instead of looking, and maybe throwing away that paper the other day was a sign of this,
totally.
That rather than looking back over my shoulder to get as far away from this guy as possible, I'm starting to look forward to who I am in the future and running as fast as I can towards that person.
100%.
That actually feels pretty good to say out loud.
Yeah.
I don't, because I think,
which is what I'm
looking over the shoulder for a long time.
That's what I'm experiencing with you, because you're obviously saying over the last, especially over the last several months, you're starting to ask the question, why, or like, what is this all about, right? Which is more forward thinking, and connecting more with maybe your feminine of being like, okay, yes, I can keep taking action moving forward, but then I want to make sure I have a purpose behind all this.
Yeah.
And your purpose can't just be to avoid running into that guy, right? So I think it's a cool evolution that you're stepping into now, which I think is, and I've talked to a lot of people, but a gal that I had on the show, Allison Armstrong, she talks about like different, moments in men's lives, the kind of like the progression, the life cycle of a man's life, and a lot of times people are like, oh, he's having a midlife crisis, and what it really is though is typically men in our age, 40 to 50 years old, start to question more of like, okay, I've been getting these results, I can now see a fair amount of life behind me, and do I want the other half, the second half of this act, if you will, of this novel that we're writing, to be similar to the first act? And if not, then what is this all for anyways?
Right.
So it's more of not so much a midlife crisis, it's more of a deeper questioning as to like legacy and the relevancy of why we're doing what we're doing here.
Legacy is massive to me.
Yeah.
I had a family friend that I grew up with, and his father, who had been, kind of a father figure to me, passed away many years ago now. But I'll always remember, and this was as I was kind of starting my career in the nightclubs. But I remember going to his funeral, and my friend is up speaking, and he, big strong guy, but father's funeral, has the moment where his voice cracks a little bit, and he stops. And his father had coached high school football for years and years, and so he says, "Hey, just for me, for my sake, would you please raise your hand if my father coached you?" And this church is packed with people, and these hands start going up all over this church, and it's all age ranges, right? I mean, it was been 10 years our senior to little kids. I mean, they're just everywhere, and it was the most powerful visual of legacy. Well, there's two of them, but this one was the first that I had ever witnessed. And not that I think about it in a morbid way, but I think about that in my lifetime. Like, if people were at some point to be asked, if Jimmy Everetts had an impact on your life, a positive impact, would you raise your hand? Like, I want as many hands as possible to go up. And it was a powerful visual as far as legacy, and it was also, in the earliest stages of that career, a moment where I knew I was on a bad path. Because I remember leaving that church and thinking, man, who the hell is going to raise their hands for me? A bunch of cocktail servers and bartenders that don't remember who I was anyway. And to me, that is what so much of this is about. Is what the lessons we pass along, what we leave behind. I wrote today. I mean, any goal we have, any goal we set, it's almost every time that achieving that goal is going to be based on how many people you impact, that you can achieve. Just, I mean, outside of maybe your own health, every goal you ever set is about impacting others and how you go about it.
Well, and I would say, especially though with your health, I mean, you just don't see it per se, but I mean, my parents' health directly impacted me, and that's why I stay so
That's
healthy.
very fair. Yeah.
You know, my mom passed away from cancer. My dad lost 120 pounds after she passed away. Like, my life has been deeply impacted by the ripple effect of their health, right?
I like that.
Yeah, and
I
think a lot of people, especially in this country, to realize that we all have, yes, the same 24 hours a day, you know, but what really is the currency of life, I think, is energy. And for a lot of people in this country, and even more so as the world continues to adopt more of a Western eating habits and everything else, like, you lose your energy when you're eating shit food.
Yeah.
You know? And energy is everything. Energy to play with your kids, or to invest in your relationship, or invest in your work, or to take care of yourself. It's I think that's a big part of it. I think all of it, to your point, all is how it impacts others, you know. And I had I just recorded another podcast yesterday, and he was saying a big question that he read in a book wasn't so much like how much money are we making, or that sort of thing, rather instead to focus on who's going to be there to carry your casket, you know.
Yeah.
Exactly. Whose hands are going to be there to want to honor you after you're dead and gone, you know, each of us. And I think that really does come back down to how are you showing up in life and how are you impacting others, you know, and not just, like you said, how you were showing up as a manager and kind of bossing people around per se. And, you know,
absolutely,
it's more about that lasting impact that you're leaving on people.
Completely.
Which I think is pretty powerful. In regards to letting that go, processing, you know, because I think there could also be a lot of shame that comes along with, you know, especially with a lot of guys that I've talked to, there's shame with not loving who they've been, right? And as you let that go and let that older version of you die, there also has to be kind of a forgiving of yourself. Talk about, like, if you can, like, how has forgiveness shown up in your life, whether it be for yourself or for others, as you've evolved?
I think the longer the time span goes, the more I give myself, the more I forgive myself for the rougher moments, or maybe not even forgiveness. Maybe it's just accepting, like, you've paid your dues, right? Committed your crime, did your time in your mental jail. In that moment, man, you were a prick.
Yeah.
You were mean to people, you know. But it is in the past. You're making amends. Off we go. Learning and accepting that there are some people who forgive you immediately. There's some people who don't even expect, like, they don't hold it against you. And then accepting that some people are, and the funny thing is, some people aren't going to let it go.
Yeah.
And more often than not, they tend to be the people that you had the least interaction with anyway. Like, you talked to them twice. You know? So I think when it comes to that forgiveness, it's also understanding that not all of it was bad. Not all of my anger or my frustration or my moments. Maybe the messaging was wrong, but the intention behind it was good. And so taking some of that and remembering that there are still pieces of how I handled situations that are still useful to me today. It keeps me in check to know that really, I was thinking about this yesterday, the time that it took to become that person makes me more aware of how I am now. As my business grows, as I add people to my team, as similar things happened in the old industry, because I didn't start out as a lunatic. I grew into one. Right? And so in this, like, allowing that growth to keep me balanced, and to know that if am I handling this the way that I want to handle each step? And when I do have a moment, because I still have my moments where I get hot-headed and people see it on me, and anxiety is not my friend. But knowing don't let this, have your moment, but don't let it become a lengthy chapter of your book.
Your personality, yeah. Not letting it define you.
Completely.
I think Tony Robbins says that too. Don't let your past become your future. In that sense.
I believe it.
Yeah.
I keep that as top of mind as I possibly can.
Yeah.
I think that I talk about the the high school moments and the first 4 years in the Navy and how I'm thankful for it now because this happened. Maybe I wish it didn't take me almost a decade, but I am glad that happened because I know the human being I am today is far superior to the one I would have been if I had just found a job at 30 and hadn't gone through that and hadn't been exposed to those people and those moments.
Completely. Yeah, I think about the same thing with my life. Kind of thankful for the valleys, not only the peaks. Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna ask a question just because I'm curious, just for myself. What is life like on a submarine for months at a time?
Yeah,
and I imagine what gets you through that are the people.
They are. I wish I had a more exciting answer, but I'll tell you, it starts with defeating boredom. So the one thing about submarines is you're safe. The U.S. I mean, I should say we unfortunately did. Indonesia lost a boat a couple weeks ago, but the U.S. hasn't lost a submarine long before you and I were born. So even in 9/11, I'm calling my parents and telling them I'm going underway, but I'm confidently like I'm safe. There are some other men and women that are not going to be. I am. So it is a lot of good conversation and rapport building because you're shut off from the world. You don't hear any new music. You don't know what is happening. And getting a sports report at the time and just finding out who won a football game is a big deal. You read a ton of books. You work a lot, and you just find ways to bide your time. You got guys who work out all the time. You got guys that tinker with stuff, but you just keep plugging along and counting, and at a certain point counting a calendar until you pull into port again. Drink far too many beers, and then get on the boat and go do it again. As far as like conversations when you're underway, I mean, you talk about it's hilarious to think about. You talk about anything. You talk about family and girls, and going to the bar when you get into port. The one thing you couldn't talk about was food, because food was the one thing that we knew, like you couldn't talk about your mother's pasta because it could be months and months and months before you had your mother's pasta. Right. You could talk about a bar and meeting some girl there because we're going to pull in a couple weeks. That poor cadaver will be there. So you'd be in the middle of deployment talking about God knows what. Somebody bring up Fruit Loops and shut your mouth, dude. Do not talk about Fruit Loops right now. So that's the interesting taboo portion.
That is pretty crazy. What were some of the purposes of the deployment? Is it are you shooting anything off of it? It's more
just depends on the time and the boat you're on. Launching missiles because submarines can launch Tomahawk missiles. So definitely blew some shit up. You may track other boats in the water. You may do just reconnaissance. You may do support. You might protect or just be around a surface ship to make sure that no one's doing anything to it. Just a little bit of everything. They're extremely versatile, and there's a couple different types of submarines. I was on a fast attack submarine, so our mission is to either hunt other boats, launch Tomahawk missiles, or do some surveillance. And then you have called ballistic subs that are shooting nuclear weapons that you hope you never have to deal with. But
those are bigger, I would imagine.
They are. So our submarine, a fast attack, is 360 feet.
Smaller, more nimble.
About a football field length, and then boomers are 540, 550, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, big boats.
Jeez. You really don't think. I mean, until you see one in person, or and I've seen a few in dry docks, like, man,
Oh
there's
yeah,
so
when
much
you see them
bigger
in
than you
dry
think.
dock. One of my favorite pictures is of the crew of the Memphis stand in front of the boat, and it's out of the water, and, and just little
So
peas
cool.
on it.
It's so cool, and just the technology still. I don't know how it all works, but
It's so one of the
It's
things that
mind-blowing.
always blew my mind about the sub is that so you see, wiring and stuff. So you have your outer hull to keep the water out, and then you have your we call it the people tank inside. And so on a sub, everything fits as tight as they can all through the boat. So you'd have these wires and all sorts of hydraulic valves and everything, and just looking at a piece of the boat. Oh man, someone sits in a room and sketches or draws all this shit out. These little cords going to this and operating this and mind-boggling. I mean, you have a nuclear reactor on these boats, so you have people who are trained in running that, and then you've got mechanics and electricians. I mean, it's just mind-blowing the technology that goes into it and the minds that have to think all of it up.
Yeah, the intentionality of every single screw and placement of everything.
Yeah, if they put me in charge of it, we just sink. We do a great job of sinking. That'd be about it.
There'd be little holes that are filled with Fruit Loops,
I do. That's right. That's right. I always do love, people ask about submarines and they're like, so do you see a lot of like sea life out the windows? It's not too many windows. You gotta go to Sea World for that submarine.
Yeah, exactly. It's a different type of submarine experience than at Disney. Yeah, exactly. Well, this has been really good. I feel like we could keep chatting, but I feel like the main point of this whole conversation really is about, especially for us as guys, we can all come from a lesser evolved place, but to trust yourself, trust your instincts. It takes time just to shed off old layers.
Oh, yes.
Forgive yourself. We can certainly talk about the imposter syndrome, because I think there's a lot of guys that are trying to fake till they make it. But it's cool to see that, at least my experience of you is that you're really just have settled into being grateful for who you are today as a result of even the mistakes and the shortcomings of yesterday.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
I think it's pretty cool. Any last closing thoughts? Anything that we haven't touched on that you wanted to?
Yeah, I would just say you're never out of time. If there was something that I convinced myself of, and probably why I stayed in the profession longer, was because I thought that's too late. Like, what am I going to do? I'm already 36. I'm already 37. Whatever. And I would have done that forever if they had held on to me. You talk to a lot of people, and that's kind of what comes up. Oh, I would have done this. I ran out of time. You're not.
Right.
Because tomorrow, hopefully tomorrow happens for each one of us. You got to start at some point, so you're not out of time.
Yeah, absolutely. And given that, just take action. Take action now, because you're not always guaranteed tomorrow.
Fact.
Yeah,
Fact.
Absolutely. Well, people wanted to connect with you, follow you, any of that good stuff, work with you. Where can they find information about where you're at?
Yeah. I mean, you find me on any social media platform, Jimmy Everetts. That's probably the best. If you Google Jimmy Everetts, you're gonna find some naked photos and some. I'm kidding. And then, but no, I'm pretty easy to find. Social media, and do a lot on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, whatnot.
Yeah, I think something
on YouTube.
Something this morning. I forget what I was doing something in preparation for this, and then next thing I knew, I saw your little ad on a website.
Did I get? Oh, I gotta find out what they got going on.
Yeah. But it was what? Who do you work for again?
Fairway.
Fairway. It was a Fairway ad, but at the very bottom was like your little tiny picture and your information out there.
Oh, I gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I gotta see what they're doing for me.
I put out some Jimmy Everett's cookies, and then I was pulling in the ads. So I almost clicked on it, but very cool. I appreciate you
Absolutely. Thank you
being here. Thanks for shedding the old version of yourself, and then sharing the kind of the how-to of just becoming the man that you are today, and being forgiving yourself. I think it's a pretty powerful story. So appreciate for sharing it.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah. Awesome, you guys. Well, thanks for joining, as always. Feel free to hit up Jimmy if you have any mortgage needs in the Denver area, Colorado area.
Yeah,
right? If you want to check out his dogs, check out Instagram, Facebook.
Butkus and Mosey. Oh yeah.
Butkus and Mosey.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or if you're ever in the Denver area and you want to hang out with two cool dudes grabbing a beer or whatnot, feel free to hit us up. So thanks again for following, for watching, for listening. And until the next episode, take care.